All right, so I'm gonna need you to get out the mind imagination or some some papers and some pen. You know what I mean? You gotta do this. Take like a cup or something. I don't know. Fucking use a cup. Take a big old freaking cup. All right. All right. Got your cup? Right. Now you got like straws. You know anything about straws? Poke some holes in the side of a straw. Poke some holes in the side of your cup. You're gonna poke the holes in the side of that cup. Yes. You're gonna put in the straws with the holes poked in them. They're going to be angled inwards at a 45-degree angle. And then there's going to be a slight offset further down in between that's in between and angled differently with those straws. Still 45, just angled inward, so they spiral. These were these are all going to just be free floating. Okay. Now you're going to flatten your swirls a little bit. You're going to make sure those holes are good at holding them for your cup. And that way, they're teardroppy-ish shaped. The leading edge is going to be turbuckle, apparently, is what it's called. I call them bumps, but whatever. But you want them to be curved, like whiskers on a cat. You want them to curve down, in towards the path, in direction of the airflow that we're going with. And there's a reason why I said cup, because it's wider at the freaking top than it is at the bottom. If you can imagine these things, cool. You got a nice swirly one, and you get a nice straight line one, like a star, 5, 6, whatever the fuck, and the swirl one, and then whatever. It's a swirly, whatever fucking vortex thing, right? Anyways, stick like a fucking I don't know, man. What is that? A funnel? You got a funnel over there or some shit? Stick it into it. Yeah, yeah. You're gonna stick that into the mouth of your cup. That's right. You're gonna do that. Figure it out. Find a funnel, any old funnel. I don't care. Cut out the bottom a little bit. Put some wave guides and some debuckles, meaning bumps on the leading edge of your funnel, and some wave guides, which are just trailing little, you know, wavy things at the rear. Right now, you're going to offset this with that funnel in no way, but you're going to have it rest above it. Now, how do I do that? What are those fucking toothpicks? You got some toothpicks? Got some fucking toothpicks? You got paper clips? It's a fucking paper clip. So what you got? Stick them in to the funnel. All right. Make sure it's got a little bit of a gap. Okay? Remember that bottom of that fucking funnel? Yeah? You're gonna stick that to the bottom. Yeah, I don't know. The bottom of your cup. You're gonna cut in a hole, and you're gonna stick it into the bottom of your damn cup. Alright? Alright. Now you're gonna get another funnel. This one's gonna be bigger. Now, really, realistically, you should just get a bowl or something. Okay. But then you're gonna stick it where the toothpicks and the little paper clip or whatever fuck off to the side of the top of your cup. You're gonna capture a little bit more air in there. Okay? Make sure it's just slightly offset, meaning outside, a little bit further off to the side of the trabecal funnel, little bumpy leading edge funnel thing. Slightly behind, slightly lower down, slightly wider. That's all you got to do. Typically, eh, an inch if we're talking about like a big old 32, 48, whatever fuck ounce. It's whatever. But those are the ratios. They scale perfectly to a big old massive engine. That's all you got to remember. All right. All right. So now you got this little tiny funnel thing at the bottom. All right. All right. All right. Put a fucking fuselage around this, otherwise known as a housing, otherwise known as a tube, otherwise known as anything that is a larger, straighter tube. That's all. That's all you need to do. You're gonna stick it to the outside of the other funnel. That's right. You're gonna wrap it around, stick it there. Did you make sure before you did that, though, that you ran some other, what is this? Straws, tubes, fuel lines? I don't give a fuck. What do you want to call them? Get some, what do you got? You got some surgical tubings, you got some computer tubes. Yeah, what do you got? Anyways, sticking to that, right? To every one of those straws you've got on there, right? You want them roughly evenly spaced, okay? For those straws. They're going to be a little bit bigger in the beginning with many, many smaller holes, the size of the straw diameter, with smaller holes at the rear for that teardrop shape. And then they'll get medium sized to smaller sized. Medium sized is, of course, some slightly larger holes with mostly just smaller holes. The smaller sized straws in the rear are going to be a bunch of larger holes, but they are going to be on the sides of the straw instead of the rear of the straws. All right. Now, you're going to plug the ends of those straws and you're going to shape them somehow, some way into a teardroppy shape. And then you're going to connect them with some fucking, what is that? Is that a fucking, is that some toothpicks? You got some toothpicks? Got some toothpickies? And stick them together with some fucking toilet paper or whatever, shape them to a nice teardroppy shape. Right? Connect every one of those damn straws together. They're solid, they're plugged. Deal with it. You want to make sure that the center is as bent towards the point where, shockingly, remember that hole in the bottom there for that cup? You remember that fucker? You know, there's a fucking hole there for your funnel, remember? Now you're gonna make a different thing. This is a cork. You'll get a cork or something, from a wine bottle or whatever. I don't give a fuck. Point is, shape it into another teardrop shape, stick your stupid toothpick into it, glue it up, make sure you have at least about a millimeter or two of a gap from where that funnel diameter of a hole is. Now, because you have this swirling with those, of course, straws, and then you have straight lines that are there, right? You want to make sure to maintain that. So you're going to make sure to carve into all of that, those swirled lines from those toothpicks and toilet paper. Get those other toothpicks or paper clips or whatever the fuck else from the funnel hole into the cork. That's right, you want to put that in there. But they're not just regular old paper clip or toothpicks. You're going to put oh my god, what is this? That's a straw. You have a straw. You're going to hollow out the fucking toothpick too. That's right, you are. Then you're going to put a bigger, larger, what is this? Another straw surround it. This one's going to be one of those bendy straws, but it's large. It's fine. You're going to put it around the cork. You hold out the cork. You're going to stick that straw around the cork. And what do you know? There's holes that go into the hole from the straws into the cork hole. And then you have a bendy, flappy, and hopefully you get some wave guides. Nope. Nope. Not even slightly. Nope. Nah, that's not what that is. In fact, you're actually just going to drill some holes towards the tips of that teardroppy shape cork. They're going to get smaller and then they're going to get larger. Now, the reason why is because as it undulates, it creates pressure differences and creates a pump, an undulational pump, if you will. Because of the swirl that we have for these other straws, because we have these straight lines, because we have a larger mouth and then a smaller, we're accelerating air. that creates a Bernoulli's principle. Remember that outside lip thing that I talked about? For the other funnel that's around the other funnel? I mean, the funnel around the funnel, right? Guess what? That's there. These things called straws. They have some holes in them, shockingly. It needs to support the funnel on the inside. And then I'm guessing there's fuel that goes in there, right? Oh, absolutely. How did you know? Anyways, I'm going to throw in some fuel because there's this little fucking ground effect right there. I'll zap it a little bit for the hub. Okay. I then will move this a little bit farther forward. And then as it starts to intake more and more air, I can burn air and fuel together. As it goes towards this smaller funnel at the end, at the bottom, guess what? Here's another funnel that attaches to that funnel. That's right. I'm going to cut in. You remember that funnel? I'm going to cut in these little wave guides, right? I'm going to squeeze them together, and then I'm going to have them like flare out just a little bit at the tips, and then I'm going to attach this other funnel called a bell end to that funnel, right? Guess what that is? Not done. That's right. You got it. I'm going to cut up some like construction or like cardboard or some bullshit, all right? I'm going to stick them through the slots that I made previously. You should have already thought of this because apparently you're so much smarter than I am. In there, right? Put the band around, make sure they go in, and then guess what? I have this thing called an arrow spike in there. It's hollow. How did I make it hollow? I got a fucking another basic ass bitch like cup, turned it into a teardroppy shape, and it's held on by the cardboard. Guess what? Now the funnel, otherwise known as a bell end, is done. It's complete. So, anyways, as air comes in, it then detonates the faster it gets. And it also starts to vortex towards the teardrop shape. Guess what the teardrop shape then does? It undulates because, of course, I just said that, but also it changes its pressure and then mixes into a smaller point of the funnel point, otherwise known as a nozzle. Sure. Mixes, explodes, and blasts off into the bell end. Remember that band with the little, what are those things fucking called? I don't know, stators, I guess, that hold the teardrop shape inside of the fucking bell end, otherwise known as another funnel. Guess what? Fuel! That's right, fucking fuckwads. Fuel goes into there. Here's a bunch of little straws I put into that funnel. You didn't even hear me because you were already done listening. If you got to this point, guess what? There's a bunch of straws in there, both in the teardroppy shape, the stators, and the inside diameter of the fucking bell end. They have little overhangs. That's right. They're not in line with the direction of travel. That's right. They are squished, teardroppy shape, with little overhangs with another lined direction, meaning vertical and horizontal. Horizontal, they're teardrop. Vertical, they're just straight lines divoted in. Those are where the holes go. And then I press in the other side. Guess what happens? Because they're offset. Meaning, take your fingers, your 4, 3, whatever it is, and then stick your other fingers in between those fingers. That's called offsetting. Now, they're made to curve in towards, you guessed it, the one in front. But not really. It's to split them. Not one unidirectional, they're bidirectional, bifurcation. What does this do? It expands it rapidly while also allowing for wicking effects of fuel. As a result, I can burn more fuel if I run extraordinarily lean towards that point, and then have that. Remember that nozzle right there, the funnel, a little. Remember, and I had to attach it because I put these little waves. Right, it's like there's fuel there that cools it. As it then vaporizes, it's very ready to go into the inside diameter, and outer and inside diameter of the bell end and the teardroppy shape. You got their imagination. You got the here's how to make it basically, so you can kind of really conceptualize it without any of this computer bullshit. And maybe you can draw it. Maybe you can understand and imagine what I'm trying to tell you. Perhaps, since you're so much smarter and better than I am. Anyways, air comes in. We get the Venturi effect, right? But we also get Bernoulli's principle. We get more air. We also get more fuel. It starts to accelerate. It's already mixing. It then explodes. Detonation, right? No, it's deflagration until it gets to the nozzle point where it has started to vortex, really incredibly heat up massively. Then, because I've made sure those stators are turned just so it still continues to vortex, and instead of straightening itself out, it actually will shockingly spin faster and mix better and get pinched, compressed even further, because of course there's a mass behind it, there's a pressure behind it. And what do you know? One side of this undulational, like a pop engine of a toy, happens to seal it off right there. And it expands in no way, technically speaking. It races ahead as there's a big volume all of a sudden, and then there's now a gap. As there's already heat there, it is already traveling very fast. It now has the ability to detonate right at the nozzle point. That little undulation, that's a pump. It changed its pressure. As it goes faster and a big mass suddenly flows on another side, it then yanks itself over to there. And it rotates constantly in an undulational, circular manner, creating both a valve and a pump at the same time. Guess what happens? Since it's all cooled, and I'm running extraordinarily lean, I then massively sped it up, massively heated it up, and massively compressed it. It then wants to rapidly expand into the bell end. It's not quite there yet for the detonation, but whatever might have been, whoo boy, so close, right? To doing it. All the fuel is burned, right? But it's super compressed. It's so hot. It's moving so quick. Can't we use it? Yes. In the bell end. These tiny little, massively already very boiled off, vaporized, ready to immediately burn fuels are right there, ready to do exactly that. Burn. They then expand outwards, they push up, the Venturi and Bernoulli principle effect occurs, it wicks it in, and what do you get? After a little bit of movement, a massive detonation. In small, little, tiny increments, over and over and over and over and over and over, as a constant, never-ending thrust. It's a never-ending thrusting detonation that does an equal and opposite directly to the bell end. Right? Of course, it has to be supported by this, what is this tube that has these fuel lines and everything in there? That's the housing, right, that goes to the bell end. And wouldn't you know it, it intakes faster air velocity than any of this turbine jet engine spinny doohickey business bullshit. It compresses it because as the faster it goes, it has to hit the turbuckle leading edges and it sends the shock wave back into itself, recompressing it as a ram scram. It also happens to have something in the way called the fucking straws, otherwise known as stators. It compresses it and gets more dense and dense and dense and dense and dense until it gets to, that's right, the teardrop shape, otherwise known as a secondary aerospike. Because technically, right now, it'll run as is, as a basic bitch jet engine. But you didn't do it well. You didn't do it right. Why wouldn't you just spend a little bit of extra time and make that really do a lot more work? You see, the Q value is so high and the detonation so intense because as it moves, it of course dynamically, passively, and you can even do an active with pumping, changes its pressure and sends a detonation wave directly into the bell end. That then moves these structures and helps continue the pumping action, but also sends you forward. And as there's a bunch of them, it constantly does this. As it goes faster, it constantly gets more compressed. As it goes higher, it's able to dynamically alter its mouth opening width, making greater amounts of airflow possible than previous. I can always extend the length of both the bell end and the inside hollow aerospike, giving it more efficiency at a higher altitude with greater velocities achieved. Mach is easy. Are you kidding me? I can go well above Mach 10. No trouble. Why don't they do this? Probably because you're lame and stupid and aren't as smart as me. Mr. I can't imagine that much. Put it on a screen, do these exacty blah blahs. I have a degree. My certifications. I'm an actual professional. You will find me as someone that you will listen to. Proceed to continue doing just fine without that. There you go. Because, no, why would you think of this? Because why would I want spinny bullshit that sucks up energy? That is literally my problem. No, I'm a jet engine. I need spinny spin. No, you don't. No, you fucking don't. No, you don't. I can shove in air with this fuel, any gas. I can just immediately ignite it. It takes nothing. I can then get it to more and more liquid, gaseous things. I can eventually just turn it into straight up practical propellant itself. I can cover up the front by having it squeeze. I now have a rocket engine for space. I can always create an undulational pressure wave inside. You think that front intake area is impossible to make effectively a different type of pump and seal? I can then have plasma exist in there, use ionic as it wants to travel there anyways, as it's a positive to a negative, negative plasma, positive plasma. It then wants to combine and equalize out, creating better heat. Easily done with a bell end like what I have, as that is the fuel coming in to be burned. The heat gets resonated and reused as a pressure wave and electricity. Cooling, heat, what do I get? Mechanical pressure differences. That's pyro and piezoelectricity. Not to mention there's work energy I can put from these two things in the first place, right? One's positive, one's negative. I already have a little bit of storage to begin with. There's the substances of these straws. Oh, I can't possibly have it do a little bit of work as it combines. What idiot said that? Guess what? It still happens to produce the same equivalent speeds, and in fact, better speeds, than any of your rocket engines currently can. Higher mass flow, better specific impulse, a better efficiency for your delta V. But it takes electricity to start, which is fine. You have batteries, retard. You have solar panels, fuck up. You've got the ability to do that, dumbass. Why don't you fucking grow up and use your knowledge a little? Who says they're better than I am? Fucking dumbasses, I tell you. They don't get better. They think they know more, and they don't. They don't got nothing on me. I did this work well before I got into this apartment. I did this all the way back when I used to live in my parents' Chandler house, before Trump was elected. That's right. And look at you trying to play catch up to a very intelligent, smart, genius level guy and his ideas. Unlike you, who's learning from him as you steal his shit. Because he ain't learning. You said you were better. You said you have a degree. You said you have all the things. I call that stagnation! That's right, stagnation, bitch. Stagnated. Stagnation. Now, we're going to talk real quickly as to what those, but we already actually know what some of those electrodes, materials, and more are going to have to be. For what it's worth, it all depends on the fuel that you're going to want to run. And I tend to go with anything, any fuel. I don't care. Literally any of it. It doesn't fucking matter. Any of the fuel. I want to not die out in space. Any fuel that'll run off of anything. That's what he's going to do. Any fuel. Any of it. That's what we're going to do. Any fuel. So that then turns it into, yeah, that's pretty easy. You know, here's some graphite. Here's some basic, what is that, fucking insulative ass material, which is some of them are ceramic, some of them are organics. You know, some of them are synthetic. Really doesn't really matter that much. It just needs to survive high heat and pressure and be able to elicit an electromagnetic. So I need to insulate it, and then I still need to run the lines properly to them, which is essentially just copper. But it's like, hey, if it's copper, I don't want just regular copper. I need it to be able to handle really high heats as copper, which means I have to run fuel through that copper. So that copper needs to be, shockingly, but not that shockingly, covered in something, doesn't it? Right? Pretty simple shit. Easy enough to understand. Put some quartz around because that's another insulative property. Dope it the right way, that's another electrically conductive and more thermally conductive, depending on how we want to do that. Because guess what? As the plasma and ionic gases come in towards each other as they resonate, and we have to pulse them correctly through to create that given type of constant thrust into the bell end, as we effectively have the whole engine now as a big mixing combustion chamber, which is a good thing. You're going to want that, as we can swirl it down and we can swirl it back out, and then we can swirl it back down and we can swirl it back out. That's a rotational fluid, like a torque converter. As it spins, it goes out and it goes back towards the center, it goes out, all that, right? Pretty simple stuff. But we're going to use plasma, and of course, we have a certain amount that we need to be ejected at incredibly high speeds. Light is a good speed to aim for. We'll never hit it, but it's a good speed. We can get light speed. It's a good speed. We're going to aim for it. Well, shockingly, there's a lot of light that's probably elicited in this. So it's like, that's probably something I'm going to capture with this quartz. Why would you have quartz? Oh, you have quartz? That makes so much sense. There's so much quartz here. It's transparent, isn't it? No! Shockingly, what do I get? A laser, an inertial confinement, and a aligning laser. You see, as it goes into the bell end, it means I can make sure, as it comes out, that the plasma and the gases head the direction we want them to. We're also able to use that for the electromagnetic fields, for the ionic and plasma propulsion. We can reheat them up, but we can also force that to mean that they don't get very close to those boundary layers, and they don't go places we don't really want them to go. And then we can also dump in, with constructive and destructive interferences of the wavelengths involved, that light into more speed. Instead of pressure, it's aligned. Think it became more linearistic. And then we continued to flow it faster. And then we were like, yes, but wait, what if we wanted to be slightly baryonic? Some of it's there as a baryonic, but the vast majority of it is fermionic, okay? Which is great, because then it will rapidly expand in our bell end. It means I can pump more pressure into that nozzle and fire out the mass at a higher velocity than previously. A much higher Q value is achieved in space. Shockingly, tubes are not very difficult to manufacture. Who would have thought? And to bend them slightly is also not very difficult. And to carve into them a little with, like, what is this? It's almost like it's a hole saw. It's just slightly different. A turbuckle front, it's like, oh, again, not that fucking difficult, but wait. What if I just wanted to mold them and cast them? Again, actually still pretty easy. But if I wanted to cast them and put a multiple thing together, oh, again, I'm not seeing an issue. Actually, I'm seeing that can be done, and fairly cheaply, and accurately and consistently. It's almost like this will cost way less and even be able to be functional in our atmosphere. What is this? Nitrogen? Let me just burn that with something that takes nitric oxides and turns it into, because we have electricity? A oxidizing agent? And we're going to do this thing called more pressure and velocity and detonation velocities. Behold, the airship of the vacuum nature that only needs one of these fuckers to get into space. For what it's worth, I'm not going to do just one, because fuck that. That seems scary. If one of them fails, well, it's the only one, so no. I'm going to do a little bit more than just one. I'm going to do like, what is a good redundancy number? 5? 5 sounds good. Fuck it. We'll do 7. We'll stick them around each other. I'll have one in the center. That'd be the big boy, the main guy. Be able to do this undulational, gimbally thing of the thrusty vectors. I'll put like some little things around on the outside of the, what is this called? Fucking bell end. So they can gimbal. And then they have, what is that? A bunch of like the F-22, F-35, all these, they used to have these little flaps that just slide on each other like a lobster tail kind of thing, right next to each other. They're kind of like trapezoidal triangle things. You know, just gets in the, you know. Otherwise, hey, you know what that is? That's a cupcake, right? Yeah. What do you want my cupcakes for? You see this? It bends. See this thing? It's vertical slightly. It bends. It can kind of move around. It's effectively what they've got, but with the right material. If you know what that is, then you probably know how to fucking make it. You knob. Anyways, behold, I've got 7 of them. That means I can dynamically change thrust top, bottom, left, right, diagonal for the X's, and the one in the center. All while also moving the little flappity cupcake thrust vectory gimbal stuff and do even more. It's almost like I'll have one hell of an amount of movement. But no, we're not done yet because, of course, I can make tiny little versions of these. I'm going to stick them at the front, stick them at the sides. There's no real wing. It's more of a tube than anything, you know. But it is slightly shaped so that way I get more of the lifting body characteristic. It does, unfortunately, look a little bit like a phallus. I'm not going to lie. It does do that. Like every time. I can never seem to get around that. Yeah, it's pretty consistently, efficiently strong. You know, it's a good shape. I'm just saying. Sure, let's just sell it. Whatever. But then, like, that's the cleft, the head. And of course, that's like a different type of thrusting, right? As it moves. And then, like, that's a big old canard area, right? As it goes up and it goes down. And that helps with, like, you know, movement. And then, like, behold, a slightly more erect curvature on one side left or top or whatever. And guess what that gives us? Movement through the air. And it happens to do wonderfully, efficiently, great. But very high altitudes because it's the most surface control area you could really have. Especially with the big bulbous part in the fucking rear. To hold all the gas and fucking I don't want to do it. It's such a stupid, but it's like it's not. It is actually better that way, but it's still one of those things because it's like no. I mean, this is a bulbish E, but then there are just like with the you know the whales, they have these big long lines. They're channels there, and we can widen and shorten, and you know, and so that allows for greater amounts of surface control right where that is, and that's a big also cooling area. Behold the cooling area. I know, shocker. It will help with cooling where we need it the most exactingly right there. So then it's like, no, I'm not even fully done because that will extend outwards. And then we have the little slidey and then the little foldy out things. And then behold, this stuff called solar, you know, capture and cooling, right? And it's a vacuum. So then it's like, now I have a bunch of space that I can just exist inside of. In the meantime, besides just this one little small, you know, thing, right? And then now it's like, oh, you know, that's a bunch of air and all that rest of it, and then more room to do things with. Look at all this fuel. I just went through a few clouds every so often. Just picked up some more fucking hydrant. I just kept, you know, making sure it cooled itself off, you know, in those higher altitudes and use the undulation on the surface. And it's effectively a bunch of like, so it's really able to be cooled quite significantly, but this is pressure. So this is acoustic. And then we have laser, which is great. And then we have, what is this? Regular convection. And it's really quite cold. And then we have expansion into a vacuum area. That'll help cool it. Shockingly, as it decomposes, which it's not yet, but it's quite a bit already evaporated and very molecularly speaking, spread out, which improves the efficiency of this stuff called catalysts and electricity and vibration and cooling and separation with charge differences, which we need to begin with this thing called, I don't know, the engine I just talked about, which then turns it into, I'm making so much fucking goddamn hydrogen of the liquid variety. Look at how much fucking oxygen this bad boy holds. A lot. It's a mini gallon amount. I'm not gonna look that much at it. It's a big tank. Huge tank. It scares me. If it were to fail, this fucker scares me. It's getting filled though, I'll tell you. Whoo boy. What is that, ozone? Mine! That's what that's called. That's mine. Anyways, what is that, hydrogen over there? I'm gonna fucking take that hydrogen. I'm going past Jupiter today. Getting some hydrogen. What you got over there? Oh yeah. Anything that burns with oxygen? Anything? What you got? Yeah. What you got over there? Anyways, but that's the whole premise of it. It's a detonation velocity, but it actually doesn't start that way. It's making it so it will turn into that at the exact right place where we want it to be and spreads it out so evenly that it's a constant, never-ending thrust. But that's also one of the reasons why it helps so fucking well with the plasma and ionic, because it's still, relatively speaking, negative, trying to balance its charge out. Once it can get into the bell end, it helps cool it, sure, that's nice. But that's not what I'm doing it for. It's because the moment it combines, it shoots forward, right? And that rapidly increases the Q value, the amount of electrical potential, the amount of electromagnetic, which, by the way, you should really listen to some of my other videos about electrical flow and then the magnetic flux for magnetic flow stuff, because I'm going to use that for this, which makes it way more efficient than you think. But even then, with the current stuff, it's still quite efficient. In fact, better than what we have now. But still, it's one of those things where it's like the opposite reaction is what that is. And so it's ratios, air-fuel ratios, otherwise known as charge ratios of the fuel that we're using. So once that goes off, that also helps align other plasmas and ionic to effectively continuously mix, but also go the direction we want it to. And in part, their equal opposite reaction to us as efficiently as they could. Like, I created an artificial atmosphere in the bell end to allow for us to get an even more efficient design, right? That is why there's also 7. Because it's like, man, if any one of them fail, oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, it can right in the center, huh? Yeah. Yeah. In the front there. But it's good for what it's worth. Oh yes, no, along with like the sides, and then same thing where and then that can, and so that's the bare minimum amount, right? Absolute bare minimum amount of engines to allow for us to both thrust one direction, reverse and brake, but also turn, meaning corkscrew, meaning, just rotate, right? Or corkscrew, or full on turn, like sideways or vertical, right? I have the top, the bottom, the front, and near the rear, both sides. There's an engine there at the rear, and then while there is an engine at the front, it's not all the engines like in the rear. So there is obviously a hatch. We're talking about hatches now. So you can absolutely connect it to things, which is a good thing. You're going to want that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure somebody will try and create a vagina one. I'm almost certain of it. Mine was just like, it's super efficient and it'll work. Also, somebody kept saying it kept looking like a penis, and I was like, it's a really easy it's a cylinder. It's so easy to make. It's really quite a bit easier. I was going to go with like a big pancakey-esque shape that was a little bit, more like curved at the, so it's kind of like a plate or whatever at the sides. So that way, but then I can like kind of like, have it trail off a little bit. And then that would create more of a lifting body characteristic. And then I could, kind of bend in the front. Right. So that way it would create these nice little vortexes and waveguides for the thing. But then it's like, oh my God, that's a really hard shape to actually make. You know, this is way more difficult. It's not tremendously more difficult for some people, but for me it was. I don't know who those people are. I want to know them. You know, just because it's like, well, I mean, yeah, sure, I get lift, but that doesn't, doesn't help as much as you think. Yeah, especially when I can flatten this shape out, and still get all that buoyancy and lift. It's more or less ovaloidish as it's going through. Yes, I know, I get it. Still funny, haha. But like, it's still what it is, and it was really efficient, especially because we're traveling a certain direction, and as it curves off to the sides, that allows for us to have that wave guide and then vortex effect, so that way it tries to multiple times skip off from the top, which is flatter now, and actually kind of bowed in, which again, I know, funny, haha, is effectively very similar shape, but it worked extraordinarily well to making a lifting body characteristic work. So it was like, well, I mean, that's basically the whole thing, when it comes down to that. But then it splits off and allows for it to be much more easily as it travels forward at a very high velocity. And re-entry is what I talked about. It's like, oh, you can do re-entry as like the pancake shape, right? You mean the parachute look? Or we just sort of like dart in and then we try and go, you know what I mean? Versus like this one, which is like, yeah, what if, like, but what if? Just hear me out. But what if we were traveling a lot faster and that was really dangerous to do? What if we weren't traveling that slowly? What if there's orbiting mechanics here and we're, re-entry is quite hot, right? And we don't want to slow down and die immediately. Like immediately just stop and then boom. What if we didn't want to do that? What? Just hear me out. And so it's like, oh yes, no, as I come in, and that'll make it much easier to control like the curve and then like the all that, and then it can widen quite a bit more with like little stubby wings. That's effectively what they are, but they're more towards the bottom and in the middle, and then they're made to flare just a little bit, towards the tips, kind of like wings of like a bird or something, but they're just meant for gliding. They're really there to just maximize lift, which isn't really that necessary for takeoff, for what it's worth, because it's like, oh no, it's floating. It's got buoyancy. Right? I actually want, instead of slowing down, to travel faster. And I also would prefer, shockingly, to capture a great amount of extra fuel as I do this. So, this is fine and dandy when I'm coming in, and that bleeds off heat and it spreads heat over a much larger surface area, and I get more lift. Whole thing. That's great. But it's not so good when you're trying to go out of atmosphere because it's extra drag, right? And I don't really need the extra surface area. And in fact, once I get up there, it's more about massive thrust control surfaces because there's so little air, you know? And so it's just about trying to get it up over the hump into the thermosphere or beyond and into real interplanetary space, right? Which is the whole point of it, right? Versus like, when as I come in, mm, I would like to be that real slow, cautious guy, you know. Hey, no, it's fine. I'll come back. It'll be an orbit or two, and I'll get there. It's okay. No big deal. It's gonna be fine. Like that's a-okay. We're not gonna have any major issues, hopefully. You know what I mean? Versus, yes, no. Do you need the extra lift for anything? Because that makes it tremendously more unwieldy when you are traveling such that you're trying to speed up. And those little surface area control wings don't actually help for that. You should really kind of already be pointed in the direction and more or less just be trying to get going as fast as possible. So it's not worth it for the drag and what control surfaces, right? Now, maybe somebody out there would need it for like much higher loads, perhaps. I don't have any of in those wings. Uh, Anything there other than they're supposed to just be very lightweight. They're supposed to bend. They're a little bit hollow, but most of it's just there to like be better control surfaces for the overall lifting body characteristic, right? So if you needed it, I suppose you could maybe use it to a point that like you'd be better off just getting rid of them, after a point of where the atmosphere just kind of goes away. Like it really is not going to matter, So most of my designs are all based upon, well, instead of deciding to get there as quickly as possible, it's going to take a little bit longer, but in so doing, I'm going to be a lot more efficient about it and proceed to get way more fuel and have a lot more fuel once I'm up there, right? So delta V maintains at a high, or if not nearly full amount, which is the whole point. And then it takes a long time, sort of, you know what I mean, to get the heat and the undulation of the engines going, right? So it's like I might as well spend the time doing it. So once I'm up there and I'm good, I can use them. And in fact, they can burn almost no fuel and still have a plasma inside. And now they're effectively thermal batteries. Wonderful, right? So that's the whole point of them, you know. Uh, but it also means it's like, well, I need a lot less mass to get going much, much faster and maintain a 1G acceleration, which was the whole point of that too. It's like I want to get to fucking the moon within a day, man. And I do. It's a fucking long, really long, arduous process. You think it's just right there. It's not. It's just forever and a day away. Even at its closest approach, it's just so far away. It sucks. So it's like, nah, nah. How fast can I get there if it's just a 1G acceleration, like almost the entire way? Right? Because of course I do have to decelerate. So there's that. Right? And it's like, well, I also want the mass that you have. No, 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 no. How fast? Just 1G. Like a couple of hours. That'd be nice. Hmm. But I do have to decelerate. I'm not gonna smack it, so that's not gonna happen. Can I do a gravitational? I could probably do a gravitational turn. I can make this work. I could do this as long as I can, and then a little bit, and then burn at that moment, and then I can curve in a little bit and land, right? And that'd probably be a lot easier. That means I can continue doing a 1G for a lot longer, so long as the velocity is such that, and the angle that I approach at is such that it's in line with everything. So 1G is fine, but as long as of course, the moon has its own orbit, I'm heading in that same direction, while before was a lot less efficient, now is a lot more efficient. Instead of like, oh, it's moving toward my angles. They've closed as it moved. Meanwhile, it went further away. I can still keep thrusting. Cut it off already. Fucking slow down, bitch. Yeah, that kind of thing. All right, that's how I view it. It's like there's a given window, except this is the space, except the space is actually getting closer to you. Because, like, that's what that does. But what that means is your curvature outward from that points further and further in. And so your angle gets closed, right? Now, anybody knows this if they've ever tried to throw a baseball at a trampoline or anything. And then they know that the center or wherever it hit bends in first and then the rest of it comes in. That's effectively what you're doing. Think of yourself as the sheet, and as you come in, as the baseball continues to punch in, well, it curves in, and you don't want to hit it. So that's effectively all you're doing. Now, that's a good thing if you are traveling much slower and you don't want to continue to accelerate, right? Now, I still have to stop accelerating. you know, this is more of a, I'm going to catch up to you. Power slide in space. Oh yeah, and drifting all the way. Curve, baby, curve. Moon doesn't know it's coming. Let me tell you. I'm so tiny. She won't even notice. Woo! But yeah, right. But it's fine. Because it's like, well, that's great. But it also means I can carry on board much larger amounts of fuel, food, life support, redundant systems, and my personal favorite, things to build stuff on the moon with. What? Yeah. 3D printers, electrolysis, a lot of those things that basically you can grab all the moon stuff and then basically manufacture it into anything we would like. That's what it's for. That's literally what it's for. It's like, this is way, I can make this, I can string several of them together and just fucking, and then it's like, right, now we're gonna get a balloon. And it's going to be there as we come around the orbit again, as it took a while to get over. And ooh, more stuff. Ooh, yeah, more. Oh, we're getting a little bit lower on that. And oh, we're in a. And now it's time to go to the moon. Yeah. With way more supplies than we would have normally otherwise had. Great, right? Not so much for other people because, like, they spend a bunch of money doing what they do, but like for us that are not able to spend that money, behold, easier and much less, possible for us to possibly die. At least in my mind. I don't have to have a big, massive amount of, whew, Lord. I can pump it. I don't need to worry about like huge, you know, thing. I mean, there's still tanks there. There are huge tanks, but it's just not to what that was, which is kind of the whole point. And I was going faster to begin with, right? And then I'm able to grab extra supplies, and then I'm able to then carry and maintain that speed. And it's like, well, wait, what? It's like, yes, yes, yes. So it's a couple of airships, technically speaking, that are vacuum, right? But it's like, but they're not going to be going into orbit. They're really just going to be traveling up at the inclinations that we need, meaning the both the speed but also the angle, right? And then we need to match them at the right altitude, and that'll be fine. And then we effectively jettison off of them, right? So it's like that's mass, and then dunk. Hey, no, no, you need to go back there. Go back down. Go back down. Get, go. Go back. People need you down there. Meanwhile, that helps us with efficiency, right? Getting there and also being able to make and maintain a moon base. But the big plan for me was I'm gonna start a fucking colony on the moon and screw this fucking place called you know, Earth. Because it's like there's a lot of governments I don't like here, and I would like to make my own. I'd like to have my own country, and I don't like this place. I don't at all. I just don't. So I'm going to bring with me a bunch of supplies and a bunch of repair and a bunch of extra redundancy to those supplies and all that. So that way I can both make new machines, but also repair the ones I've got and even upgrade them, which is great. And that'll be a lot better. And especially when I was like, oh, yes, no, I know how to make solar panels that will work on the moon, but that's a whole other thing with like electromagnetic and laser field stuff. It's just essentially like repulse all the dust, get out of here. Shoo, you fuckers. Shoo, fuck you. Shoo. This is what you think, but it's actually more of just a constant like sort of like a charged particle or I guess or whatever, and then it's like natural light reflectivity area that it like kind of creates a good optical tweezer sort of thing that pushes them towards the charge, move it off away from it kind of stuff. So that's what I do for my stuff, especially if it's like, well, yes, no, I have this big ship, sure. I got a bigger space, but underground is larger, and I need to make things anyways. And I can make a nice little canopy. I got a good starting spot. It's called my ship. You know, I need this electromagnetic radiation shield called a magnetosphere, kind of little miniature one, and then like charged particles, and then light. So like that's gonna be a good thing, I think. You know, get some bacteria, get some other shit. Really kind of break this shit down. Get some of those bioreactors I've talked about on my channel that basically just are bacteria with the right combination of environment that will eat what's there, produce electricity, produce oxygen, nitrogens, so on with heat, right? Hey, and then, yeah, I know, look at me, I'm growing a plant on the moon. On the moon, that's my plant. I'm not going to consume that one. That one's to make more oxygens. So, like, that's good one, you know. But these ones I'm going to eat over here. They're going to grow. They're much faster. These are vertical towers, effectively, that are up on the canopy and like allow for light to come in and you know as much of the humidity and you got some spray stuff, right? Yeah, like really make sure. Yeah, they're going to really hydro and aeroponic their ass up and grow real strong. You keep growing well. I've got bioreactors that are supporting you with water and all the nutrients. You will make it so I can continue living and existing here as my country will grow. With, like people that obviously have to come with me and stuff. I'm never going back. You can't make me. I never want to go back. This place sucks. America is great. Awesome. No, it's not. It's not at all. I I have such a hard time with our government. I have a hard time with like most of the fucking government. Fuck most. Everything on this planet seems like I have a hard time with. It's like, why is it run this way? This doesn't seem. It's like, no, no. This needs to be done in a way that makes it much more simple and just better for everyone involved, you know? And there's no real way to, we're gonna coup is what like, oh, why don't you want to do that? Because fucking I don't really feel like fighting him on Abrams. I'd rather just go over to the fucking moon. You know what I mean? And, no offense, but you guys make it impossible for me to vote anything in, it seems. And then one single state is all it takes for us to never get a new amendment. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fucking tired of it. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of all of it. Why wouldn't I want to go? Why wouldn't I want to just go live somewhere else? You know what I mean? Like, fuck this shit. Uh, for what it's worth. And eventually, I mean, I've got some faux artificial gravity types. They're not real artificial gravity, but they're faux. Instead of like spinning something, though, it's more of a field particle thing. And that's not gravity thing. It's more of it imparts a force, kind of like like an optical tweezer or inertial confinement laser, right? Except instead of wanting it to heat up and all that and be incredibly, stupidly, way too much energy to ever possibly feasibly think of as reasonable, this uses way less energy, way easier in all aspects to make, which I prefer. Oh my god, there's a little falcon. I'm gonna take a picture of that. So let me just, I think it's a falcon. He says, no, and it ran. You, you bitch fucker. You damn. It was a falcon. It had the beak of a falcon. It was a falcon. I don't care. It was a falcon. You will believe me somehow without the picture for proof. That's going to be a great thumbnail. God damn it. It just happened to run. Anyways, so anyways, what does it say? Right. So, and then the engines now are a lot better because if I basically fire them at each other, they have a really high potential to create good fusion. Um, Basically, it's kind of they fire like inline, and then there's a slight offset curve towards the center, slightly up above. And what they'll do is they'll, of course, rapidly accelerate, right? The hydrogen, whatever it is that you're using, right? And of course, there's stuff to soak it now, right? Except we have to make sure that there's plasma there and that there's enough pressure. And so that's another different type of tower design, right? And so that allows for convection and for it to come back down and be cooled off and perform work. But that's another design I have. Actually, that's not on my YouTube, but now it is. It's going to be. So, but yeah, no, that's basically what that was. I call it the flower design, except it actually looks a little bit more like dicks. I'm not even gonna lie. It's like, look at the rotate, and then they fire towards the, and then there's the shaft, and there's the ball, and there's a head, and then it flares off. Anyways, eh, yeah. Oh, it seems to be penises everywhere in a lot of designs, phallic shapes, and same thing with well, whatever the not crass word for vagina is also seemingly there, which is essentially ovaloid. Yeah, so that's a whole thing, you know. Good shapes though. They work. It seems like. Been doing it for however long this has been going on for, so I'm gonna move on. Anyways, photo gravity. That one's more of a field that's pulsed correctly with a then effectively informational uh which isn't really informational, but it's a virtual particle. So it's a virtual particle that contains this information of extra light that wasn't there because it got decomposed, or which isn't really decomposed, or fissile. Anyways, it's a probability conversion bullshitty thing, like orbital decay, and next thing you know, you have a photon, right? Right? For an electron, right? But it's like, yes, but what if? But what if? Let's just hear me out. And it turns out, oh no, we've been able to do that before. So, oh, shocker! Let me hear out what we've already done. Oh, shocking! Oh no, crazy! No, just my work. It turns out. Anyways, we're technically entangling it into the field as it travels. right? And then it's like, right, and then there's the mass version, where it's like, wow, the electron was going to turn into a plasma. And then it's like, yeah, no, except what if I had the right field and the right setup, which isn't really wrong. That's a I mean, it's a great way to describe it for most people that don't know anything about it, because it's essentially it's like the right charge and the right movement and the right material in the area with the right photon, blah blah. It then turns into right. So the electron turns into another virtual particle, but it maintains its mass information as the virtual that's attached to the field because it all has to happen roughly the right way. You can't be perfect about it. You know what I mean? But it's gonna create, how like Wi-Fi is a thing, right? Well, it's kind of like imagine there was a field that was directed, but instead of having light, it's more of a propagating field, kind of like an electromagnetic pulse, right? That then actually imparts what feels like it could be mass, except it's not mass, and it continues through, and depending on the field vibration, strength, and so on, it does really large amounts of force, or which to us is really large amount. It probably wouldn't be very much for most things, unless it was really strong, right? But it's like, or it slowly propagates through and it gives you a nice little degree of push and shove, right? Right. Which is like, well, it's just, it's like what, point 0.6? Oh, I need to make up point 0.4, which isn't like terribly impossible because it mostly uses light and it mostly uses electricity that I'm going to have anyways. So I can do it, right? It's my Limke principle video on my YouTube already. I describe it a little bit more. The Limke principle laser phaser light array. And you should probably watch that. Anyways, that allows for, shockingly, a little bit of extra, push. Again, it's faux artificial. It's not real fucking gravity. There's no real gravity doing that. It's faux artificial. Okay? That's all I'm doing. But it does mean that I'm going to experience like I have a 1G force, right? Of gravity, of Earth's gravity. But only in a really relatively localized area. And it won't extend really very much into the ground. So, there's that, which is fine because, like, that's a lot easier than, like, I need to make something the gravitational force of Earth, which is like, no, 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 it'll squish. There's a whole thing. You don't have any heat. The core is dead, basically. There's no force. It's not spinning fast enough for it to maintain at G load, So like in this little area, that'll be fine, and I can slowly grow it out, and it'll take its time to get there. And then I have a moon base that's really moon country, that's really mine, and whoever comes with me, and it'll be fun, kind of. You know what I mean? I mean, we are growing something, and I've got some good ideas about extend our lifetime for biological immortality and longevity. So uh, that means we'd probably be able to make it work for a lot longer than people expect, which is a good thing. And how to raise kids, how to do the government. I got it all. We got it all planned out. We got everything planned out, actually. All the rules, all the regulations, how we're going to manufacture, everything. I've got every fucking design. I've got all of it more or less taken care of. Except for I need people and money and the ability to make them things. All of it's good and ready to go. In fact, if anything, I've only just been more and more confirming to myself it's definitely possible, with many, 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 many studies that show that I can absolutely do what I'm doing. All of it works within the bounds of sanity. The checks are absolutely going through. And fuck, even then, it's still the math checks out and all of it's working on that side. Which is one of the reasons I get angry with, like, oh, I'm better than you. I'm like, okay. Think you're the shit, fart. Get some ice spice up in here. Boop. You know as much as me. I put a lot of effort in this, a lot of time, a lot of energy, never-ending amounts of work, it feels like, because I want it that bad. It's all I want. I want to leave. I want to get away. I hate this fucking place. I hate everybody that lives here, feels like. I've never once been happy. Ever. I hate the government. I hate how institutions run. I hate how corporations are. I hate how fucking shit people are about taking accountability, responsibility, and ever acknowledging their fucking faults about how they run anything, it seems like. I can't even talk to regular people because I've gotten to a point now where I've learned so fucking much and I've experienced so damn much in my life that I have a hard time. Even though I'm like a normal person and I can relate and I can like to talk and all that. It's just so difficult for me to approach and do those things. Of course, I want to meet people and learn and explore and do new things and not feel this way, but I don't have any income. And I'm trying to get an SSI. And I can't work a normal job because of my disabilities, but man, you think I can't do this? You're wrong. I can easily, this, for whatever reason, yeah, I can do this. I have a thing to focus on. I've got stuff to fucking like just, veg out and like just get the shit done, right? I can do this. That's easy. I'm good at doing this. But that's ADHD. You know, ADHD allows for you to run around and then, be able to bounce between things and do them well and all this shit. Especially with the right people. I'm a leader, natural born fucking leader, it seems. I'm highly intelligent. Yeah, I got a good head on my shoulders. But I can't fucking work a normal job. Yeah, it's the worst. It's like so shit. Like I can't even fucking go through a daily routine, it seems. It takes me like 4 hours to wake up at times. It can take me days to remember basic shit. It can take hours to do regular things. You know? I'm good at that. That's all. I mean, I was homeless. I had to force myself to go do that, and I can do it because it's something like, oh, I can get up and I can do this, and I have to, I can run around. I can hyperfixate on something, right? I can like do this. It's easy for me to do this. It's not hard for me to imagine this even. That's the brain I've got. You know, even with the disability with my aphantasia for imagination, I'm still better at it than other people. But I can't go to a fucking school. Sorry, because I can't fucking do homework, and I certainly can't do classwork in a big, massive fucking amount of them, and I can barely handle hearing you or being that close or any of that. It's not about being around a bunch of people. It's more about this is awkward, and everybody expects you to just sort of fucking sit over here and just somehow magic up being able to hear you and pay attention and everything. And you're just supposed to apparently study. You're supposed to apparently do any of this stuff. You didn't give me a project. You didn't give me money. You didn't give me do this, that, or any of these things. And I don't even like these. I don't know these people. I don't even really want to get to the vast majority of the time. You know what I mean? Like they're all the same kind of things to me after a while. I like this kind of good person, like personality, trait, opportunity. I have this view, blah 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 blah. Opportunity. I'm money, fame, blah blah blah. It's boring. I don't care. I just want to do this. I literally don't care about any of that. I don't give a fuck about what others think of me at all. I just want to go do this, have fun, screw everything else. And it's like, no, look at this dry as fuck, big ass words, bad describing as fuck at anything textbook. Why is it that you think I'm going to listen to this professor drone on about whatever the fuck this is? But it's like, oh, yeah, no, it's like this, right? Yeah, you. It's like, oh, wow, you're my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. And when I was in college, too, teachers! I'm bored. I don't want to fucking do this. This is boring. Everything is boring. None of this is fun. I'm not going to use this. What's the point of this? Oh, you know what I have to deal with at home? A terrible fucking family life with lots of abuse. And then it's like, no, you will come up with your own. I'm not going to do that. The moment I fucking switch from this thing over to here, I'm immediately a different person. I can't fucking switch back and be like, I will now suddenly go do this thing you asked me to do. Nope. I'm not doing that. I'm already doing this. I've forgotten about it. I literally will not do it, even if I want to. And which, by the way, oftentimes I do because I stress the fuck out about doing the thing and then I still can't do it. Which is ADHD and task initiation and all the rest of it. And then it turns into, oh, you have never had any of those opportunities. You've never had that money and you've definitely never had friends. And oh, by the way, you have all these other issues. You're way smarter than you fucking can basically relate to people. Or relay, not relate, but relay to people. You know what I mean? Like, this is shit that I was thinking about back when I was in fucking elementary school, which is insane to think about. But yes, it was. I just got better at being able to fucking put it together. That's all it turned into. I mean, I was the only real kind of kid, and not the really only, but it's one of the few, is we only had a small little library in elementary school, in my elementary school, and they only had one fucking book about lasers. One small, tiny little fucker. I was basically the only one that would fucking look at that book. Now, granted, you don't understand for the kids and the Gen Zers out there, there wasn't internet. What internet? What internet at all? There was libraries. It was like, we're the internet's just starting them, yoo-hoo, and blah, blah. Uh-huh. It's the 90s over here, and I'm like, yeah, the internet, okay. I'm a kid, I don't give a fuck, right? And so it's like, yeah, no, it seems like it's insane to come up with something like this, right? It's not. I've been working on it for a long ass time. I mean, I literally delay the propagation of the shockwave until it gets to the point where it's at the fucking literal last point it could be, inside of the funnel squeeze nozzle. All those little curved in, all those little angled straws do that. They also massively increase the outright compression and blocking potential as like a Tesla valve towards it going towards the front. Even though it's getting more compressed, it just gets faster at doing its job in the moment it needs to. Makes no sense why we would have spinning blades. Such a waste. Yeah, at least they could be flywheels or something, you know? Fucking hell. They're like, why would I do it when I can use this? This makes more sense. I can pulsate it, I can move it, I can do all this stuff. And then lasers are fucking phenomenal, right? But we almost never use them because, like, why? And it's like, no, that's. Ah, ah. They're so impressively important in a lot of my designs. They help tremendously at reducing outright heat and fatigue and problems of various uh, elemental damage, plasma breaking damage, right? Like a plasma is a negative. If it's a negative, then it's like it likes to chew away things, right? But it's like, well, yeah, but not if there's a field on a laser that effectively never allows it to get anywhere near it, and it essentially forces it to act as a boundary layer repulse, like a shear force, Z pulse. As it collapses, it goes back towards accelerating itself, off of never even hitting the material surface in the first place. It still has IR, but it's like, fine, I'll capture it and I'll move it around. Why wouldn't I want to do that? Makes it more efficient. It's like, no, they're already very high temperature materials to begin with, but it's like, yeah, but what if I did even better? What if people were just kind of weird about remembering how to fucking do the basic simplisticest of things? What if they just didn't remember? That's the problem I see. It's like, no, 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 you didn't fucking remember that you can absolutely turn the surface in multiple parts, and even the plasma and ionics themselves, into various charge and field potentials, making it so nothing will ever burn. It even gets hot, but sure, nothing past what you want. Sustains itself, and instead of fusion, I don't have to worry about fusion, because fuck that. It's only going to do a basic chemical reaction until you want it to, which is essentially coming out as the electrode itself it's trying to accelerate towards is finally gone to in the bell end and then rapidly expanding outwards. And if you do that with the right charge field, magnetic, and light potentials and guiding waves, it makes it so it massively increases the amount of thrust, meaning an immediate acceleration of that gas as it's traveling away, imparts another pressure wave onto the bell end. And it makes sure I never have to worry about it overheating or burning. Perfect. Even though it's in a fucking incredible amount of speed. It's in the almost light speed category of blasted away. That's right. I know that sounds no, but we do that anyways. If you don't know, we do. As linear acceleration designs exist doing exactly this. If you didn't, fine. You're probably not well versed. You haven't kept up to date on all the little things I have. Fine. But if you do, then you probably didn't understand that I did a lot of this back when I lived with my parents, and I've been doing it for almost the entire duration I've been able to, from when I was in elementary all the way up till now. I was thinking about this stuff, thinking about explosives, rockets, engines, physics, engineering, mathematics, anything and everything I could get my hands on, because that's all that was something I could do. Yes, sure, it explodes outwards, is what you think, right? It's not exploding, though. It's accelerating, and it puts its potential into, of course, both the fuel but also the plasma back towards where the nozzle is. I can rotate it off, bleed off energy, always stored a little bit of an amount into the bell end. I don't need fusion. Why would I need fusion? Fuck fusion. I don't want fusion. Fusion's dangerous. I don't think people understand. It's not a higher Q value. I have multiple fusion engine designs already that work even better in terms of how they can and do accelerate things and put out mass that makes no sense to most people. And they'll work and they'll sustain it. Constant fusion thrusted out of a bell end. That also means there's a plasma lightsaber heading towards wherever the fuck it's pointed at. You know what this does? It doesn't do that. Perfect. Great. There's no gamma wave problems. I have no fucking like other issues in terms of radiation. There's no neutron degradation. I can just thrust and I get massive potential for very low amounts. Very low amounts of mass because of how fast it goes. Which is perfect. You know? Because all I need is hydrogen and really actually anything that'll react from a positive negative charge as a chemical. Any chemical that does this. Any of it. That's it. I don't want it to get to incredibly high pressures. I don't want it to get to incredibly high heats. I don't want it to get to incredibly high accelerations until exactly the moment I do. And then it immediately dissipates, which is perfect. You know? So that's the most efficient I can make it, especially with a vacuum. That is what it is for buoyancy. You can't do better than a big old fucking vacuum. There is nothing more buoyant than nothing in that area. There is no lighter weight than nothing. You know? You can't get more. And then I'm making lift and lifting body characteristics as well. I am way more efficient, way more powerful, way fucking more likely to actually get there on the moon with this design than I have big penis of rocket, many of these blasty blasts. Look how much cube law theory says everything about this is bad. You're putting more and more fuel into a fucking shaft, dude. There's less and less you can get to the fucking top. Cube law theory literally denotes that there is a finite limit. I don't care how hard you try. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to use it to my advantage. Hell, even with the air too. Because look at the front. You think, oh, this is cleft. It's funny. Ha ha ha. You know what I got around there? That's a ram. That's a fucking ginormous area I can just use as a huge air intake for my engines. I have a big old area on the inside. Guess what that is? Structural support, but also, shockingly, a way to suck in fuel. Turn it into fuel. Right? Perfect. That's what you want. Right? So, hey, why would you do anything else? Well, there's a lot of money in what we're currently doing, and nobody else can do it, and we're super special and all the rest of it. No. No. Fuck off. No. Not everybody might be able to build this. Sure. Yes, I am a genius. I get it. I've been told that. I've been told I'm smart. I'm told I'm intelligent, special, gifted. All the fucking words. I don't care. I don't. What I care about is, does it work? Will it work? I constantly check. I got quantum fucking physics. I got electrical engineering. I've got fucking multiple material sciences. I've got multiple composites. I've got multiple structures. I've got multiple stress points. I got multiple heat. I got multiple, all of it. With thermodynamics, fluid, plasma, dynamics, and more. I got shear forces. I even got into electrical flow, magnetic flux shit for myself. By myself. With no one's help. I'm not gonna read a textbook. I'm not gonna fucking look it up online. I'm gonna brute force it like I do all the time. I had a little bit of help and a little bit of knowledge, and then I thought real hard about it. Nobody did jack shit for me, and I want it, really honestly speaking, to be that way. I've noticed I would never have come up with this if I did any of that bullshit that others do. Where I go to others, who persuade others, just like I'm trying to think my way. Or their way. This is a status quo. That's the only way we can fucking think about that. No, it's not. This has been around. We've had rocket balloons. We've had so many fucking different things. I can make this way better. There is no reason to do it a different way. Literally at all. than mine. My way is the best way. Might suck to anyone else out there, but I don't care. I don't have to. And you know what I've been taught? A bunch of bullshit by a bunch of professors and a bunch of advice givers and a bunch of retards and many companies and governments and more that I wouldn't have cared about because you're hindered, held back by your belief systems and views, which bothered me after a while. It's like, no, you're smart. But you see that, right? No, actually, I've never thought about that. Why did you? What? You're around it every day. How did you not see it? How did you? How? How does that make sense? How does that? Did you listen to "I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you" guy over there? Yeah, I never listened to those fuckers, and I still kept doing the work, and I got better than they could ever really. Never give up on something. Keep trying. Keep searching for solutions. I have more than enough solutions to all of the issues you think I haven't considered. Literally all of them. Got them fucking solved. Want to write in the comments? Hey, what? Maybe this. It's like, oh no, actually this. Hey, what about how to? No, I got that. Like, scroll throughout all my channel. I have every fucking possible solution for all of your stupid renewables. I even have air engines that will literally make more power because of the latent energy in our air and the charge differences that exist from that. I have them so light and so powerful and so efficient that there's no need for any hydrocarbons, period. Forever. Cheaply as fuck to manufacture. Super easy. I have a bunch of materials I can harvest and recycle for nothing, next to fucking nothing. I have a bunch of different ways to do it beyond just chemical, beyond just heat, beyond just that shit. I have every fucking way to solve this shit. You know what I see though? It's too good to be true. It's not. It's not. There exists a solution to everything. Unless somebody makes it so it's not possible to do it. And that's the status quo problem. That's the problem I had. There's a big corporation. There's a bunch of no. They would switch if there was really no. They'll make an excuse. They always make an excuse. The only reason why we ever fucking got rid of leaded gasoline isn't just because the guy went to court for that shit, but because there were fuel restrictions and enough of it happened so rapidly they had to implement rules and regulations. There is no reason why you can't make this happen, other than a bunch of ass fucks make it so it's not possible. Rich, powerful, and those that gluck gluck and lick and kiss boots and brown nosing and all the rest, with the dicks, so on. It's not even a joke. Even colleges have this problem. We are the alumni. Meanwhile, I don't even really care about my college, and then all of a sudden, oh, that guy. No, hey, ring. Hey, no, this is looking bad. It makes it so that our college is not as big a deal, and like I'm not going to be as well liked or thought of as big as I am. I'm at this record label. I'm at this website. It's all there. I'm in this party. I stand by these religions. You don't fucking think about it until you really look at it a little bit. And then you go, shit, I want out. Fuck this. You think there's no tribes. Why? You think, oh, he's trying to sound deep. No. It won't work because, yes, it will. I have more than enough of an ability to make it work. In fact, I need that plasma anyways. You know why I need that plasma? That helps create a magnetosphere while I'm traveling at the speed I'm traveling in between interplanetary space points. Unless they don't have a magnetosphere like in Earth, in which case then I don't. But point is, you know, I can use that plasma and ionics create a magnetosphere that's around the skin. That's also a dense, hot, charged particle. If something comes around, I can make sure I don't get hit by that fucker. I can also use both not only solar panels, but also the AIR expressions and destructive interferences, to allow for a constant, basically like a sphere, another little localized area that makes it so I'm less likely to be harmed by radiation. It helps with my air, oxygen and nitrogen, and some of those heavier elements of these neons and argons I'm planning on using to allow for efficient transfer of heat, but also a much easier way to allow for a pumping action as they start up at a higher point. As they go down to the lower point, they drain off their energy, heating it up or cooling it off, while also allowing for a higher, denser atmosphere than before inside of the cabin, with less of the gas that we would need overall. It's still the same percentage. We still breathe more than well enough, but I don't want as much nitrogen. I'd prefer a little bit more of those noble gases. It also helps with those charged particles and transferring that energy and allowing for carbon to be taken out with the correct substances, otherwise known as chemical, otherwise known as catalyst, and otherwise known as, if I have a bioreactor, that means I can also use them for that very purpose too, which is a good thing. They are going to want that energy. They're going to want those electromagnetics. They're going to want that. That's around the skin. It's a good thing to have. That allows for filtration and a constant recirculation. I created a terrarium inside of the space cabin, along with not just if I have the engines as also a helper to the filtration of the air, I can also just have regular filtration methods. It's now better at keeping its heat for longer, because there's bioreactivity. There's light that helps it. The engines keep it going. Everything lasts longer than you expect. Everything's safer than you think. Everything's a higher efficiency and power than you thought. And the last final part about the engine is, if you wanted to, I shouldn't say wanted to, you have more power than you thought this would really be. Both in our atmosphere, but also as a total amount in space. Reactivity has to happen somehow, and it has to be captured some way. That means there's always a plasma ready to jump in. There's always a gas ready to push. There's always that can increase the amount of pressure in the outright heat that we can store. Becomes more and more efficient, like any other Stirling engine, the more heat you give it. There's, of course, a point where that's not the case, right? And you actually just get really dangerous outcome possible, right? But it's a huge volume of electricity as a battery, huge, huge amounts of speed and delta V over time, right? It's just more powerful than you think. That's really what I'm trying to put it into your heads. That laser light stuff, right? I can compress that, guide that, not just in the bell end, but in the nozzle. I can do a lot more than you think with that. Especially with the pressure wave, especially with that being an oscillating and able to be moving in a circular manner pressure wave. I often create a ring, a toroidal ring of both fermionic excitation and a baryonic core with a hybrid baryonic fermionic ring plasma right at that moment. It collapses like a cone and spreads out, helping expand it, mix it, burn things very efficiently, but also accelerates it massively because the ring can also spin, undulate, widen, and shrink. All of that increases and changes what you resultantly get for your electromagnetic properties and your light properties. And because you can fire the light in between the ring and its center, you can massively increase, especially since light's still going to be on the outside, the total amount of speed that you see and achieve. I can always store this effectively in that nozzle point a lot more than you might have previously thought, for a lot longer than you previously thought possible. Like, how would you store it? Then how would you close it? And how would you bleed it off? And how would you blah, 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 blah? If you ever listened to some of my other YouTube videos, then you would have already known that, although they're deeper in, but still, it's what it is. They're some of my first ones, basically. But this allows for a changing dynamic variable thrust, as I can accelerate it or put more mass out. That means I can bleed it out. Little expansion into the bell end. It looks like it's not even doing anything. It's so clean, it's not even there. There's almost no heat, even if it's in our atmosphere. It's so little. How are you getting so much thrust? Eh, eh. Wouldn't you like to know? Especially when I'm like, yeah, no, look at me travel through the air. I'll just fucking like heat exchange that bitch and make it a different type of charge variable from the outside where the ends are. And then as it comes in from the bell end on its outside towards the center versus the ionic that's there too. Thus cooling it, but also gaining way higher amounts of thrust than you think for the given mass that's there. And while you think, oh man, it'll make so many nitric oxides, not really. It explosively decomposes and separates itself into fluid lines that you'd be controlling. It'd be really, really decently, relatively cold. Not hot enough to like burn our atmosphere, but still quite fast in the however much you want it to be, depending on the energy that you want to dump in, speed of light. And since it has so little mass, it's like, yeah, no, but actually here's a bunch more mass. Here, just more mass there. Just here's some more mass. Here's. Meanwhile, what does that mean? It's a pump. That's a huge pump. Look at the air intake at the front, right? Look at the fucking like top. That's a bunch of areas I can suck in air constantly. I can turn those little toroidal, no, not toroidal, wave-guided areas along the side and at the front and the cleft and all the rest into far more efficient designs because they'll massively increase their vortex potential as there's a vacuum that's making that happen. It also helps to create those pumping actions. It helps to create moving more vacuum on one side or another to help with the lifting body characteristic and control surface area. It's also storage for gas around the sides, as we can dump it in as an afterburner and still cool it and increase our mass that we put out. Now, the reason why I say cool it is because, yeah, if I have it way hotter than I would like, that's fine because I can cool it, but I can get way more mass as a result, making it thermally far more efficient for thrust. Good stuff, right? A lot cleaner too, and it produces a lot less gamma ray. There's no ultraviolet or X-ray for that matter, which is good, but still, somebody out there will try and go too hard with it and probably produce those things. But it's like, you're already going like 99% speed of light, dude. What do you need even more heat for? What do you need it to go even faster? What's this going? What are you doing over there? What are you doing? Hey, hey, I see you. Anyways, that's what that would be. It's an all-in-one, ready-to-go design. But that's the cheapest, fattest detonation engine. That's right. It's fat to a degree, though, for what it's worth. Not really, though. Like a lot of people like that. Man, I got you. Um, it's like, no, you don't. It's like, I almost had you. Yeah, and we're not getting together. I'm not like that. I do hope you die, though, in a car crash. Burn. Just letting you know. I was like, now I have a way to get to fucking moon. I have a way to get to Mars quickly, cheaply, efficiently as fuck. You know? I just have to fucking basically do a figure eight from where the moon is, with a couple of gravitational turns, essentially. I know that sounds kind of weird and odd. It's like, why would you slow down? It's like, yeah, you wouldn't maybe. It's not really like that. I'm not technically doing that. Like, I know you think I'm doing that. The answer is not really like that. There's a whole orbital mechanic thing and velocity and gravitational turn stuff that allows for that to be a lot more efficient when you can burn like that. So it means that as it's moving in its orbit and I'm getting further away at that figure eight, forward to where it's going to go, I'm then able to pick up more and more of the velocity of Earth and the orbit of the moon each and every time, and then I'm able to swing forward far further towards Mars than you might expect. And since I can wait for the right time to do it, I can spend a longer duration doing it. That means I use less fuel and I can always refuel. It then allows for me to get to Mars way sooner than a few months. We're talking a couple of days. And that's great. I'm also traveling very fast. So that's usually why at those closest approaches, there's a moon and a couple of other moons, and there's a big body called Mars that I can use as a gravitational slowing down, so to speak. As if I hook in the right way, and it's basically traveling away from us during that moment, it then will try and drag us back towards that. That allows for me to burn there and then use an invert gravitational turn to essentially do the same thing again, right? And that allows me to then land with a lot less fuel used because I have a ability to refuel and continue getting more stuff along the way during those times accelerating. Well, sure, it might take me a couple of maybe a week, maybe a couple of weeks, right? In a few days, I'm there. which is far better than before, right? So, anyways, what I was trying to get across was now I have a much larger surface area as I can string them together. I have a much larger ability to carry more with me there, and then I'm able to make things there, which then allows for me to put colonies on Mars very quickly, very cheaply, and even use the very vacuum principle of buoyancy to help, along with lift as well, and the thrust, of course, that is going to be able to be there. But this would be more of a so kind of roughly the same shape, but it's more of a uh, lifting body, vacuum, buoyancy, and thrust, which really means I come in at a different angle. So instead of going in, I'm sure somebody out there was thinking, no, I get your desire to penetrate, but no. The answer is actually it allows for you to come in at a much larger area and then use the big shaft and cleft and all that as a way to effectively reorientate yourself, right? And that also means you can place in reusable, shockingly, big ass vacuum parachutes. They're a different type of vacuum thing, but they're still attached to a cable and they're still a very large surface area and they are still parachutes, but they do have a buoyancy to them and they open much more rapidly. And since they're attached to many more things, that means they become more efficient. And because there's heat there, because we're creating heat from our engines, we capture a little bit of that. That allows for, as it goes and flows through, to go through, and this is why the vacuum and the rigidity of the structure is such that it is lift. That's right, there's a lower pressure than you would have thought. And I don't really want all of the, fuel. I just want a little bit of that to effectively make more of that occur. That's all we're doing. Okay. And that means we can land a lot easier because typically I tend to do a lot further of an orbit and slow touching down caution, kind of like I'm dipping my toe in the water, right? And slowly get to the point where I'm able to land just fine on the Olympus area, because it's like, well, that's a lot easier for what it's worth. It's a lot. It's like much higher, and there's a big slope, and I can kind of roll into it. Anyway, let's try and instead of like boom. Let's just not do that. Let's just try and really kind of like use that lifting body characteristic off of the ground effect characteristic, right? And then try and like really, maybe dig something, like throw them back behind you. You get that little, a rope, kind of like guiding kind of thing, like a cable, but it's not really a cable, but it's kind of more of an anchor more than anything. But and it slowly unravels, right? Kind of thing. That allows for us to finally land very gently over a much longer period of time, while also at the same time suddenly having big troughs on the side of a mountain, which could be useful for something. I don't know. Maybe they won't be, but I think they could be. You know, that could be material for us to examine and then turn into something. And then, oh my gosh, is that like telecommunication signal stuff? Where did that come from? I have no idea. Meanwhile, it's also, yes, look at my big vacuum. Yeah. And then the reason why the mountain's there. Yeah, because it's a lot of wind, but even if the wind is there, it's just not much atmosphere. So, it's a way to like try and, sort of keep it a little bit more consistent, I suppose. You know, that's that's all I've got on that, So base operations. And then I have the ability to, because I like to do this, the piezoelectric, mechanical stress and strain, and solar panels, right? The solar panels is great, but wind, big surface, vacuum, undulation, more electricity, I think, than I could get maybe as how far away we are on Mars from solar. But I don't know, truthfully. It's less atmosphere, and it depends on the surface, and then you know, I guess it does depend really on how much dust. And anyways, point is, there's a bunch of things. It's still viable, very viable. It's just I don't know. I feel like the wind might give us just a scotch more on that one, but that's cube law stuff. Right, because like it's sponge-ish form, and it still has to attach both sides and be able to do the thing. So I don't know, yeah. So, but anyways, that's where that is, and then that means then you are able to examine things, I guess, run around, I suppose. I have a couple of spacesuit designs. They're like a liquidy exoskeleton built-in kind of thing. That's really pretty cool, and then it kind of takes care of your waist. Right, and, they're fairly form-fitting skin almost levels of, like, accuracy. You do grow hair still, and you do still need to trim nails, but they have, like, a life support pack that effectively uses, biomimicry. So it's a catalyst and enzymatic, but I just use catalyst because it's easier, and some electricity and light and heat. It's like you produce, light and heat, right? But you also will come with at a start, and it won't last forever. It just lasts a really long time. But because you move and you eat and you do things, you're a battery for that, right? And then, like when you need the exoskeleton, right, you have the power. But it scrubs air that you breathe in, and it gives you back the correct nitrogen oxygen mix. Okay, under pressure, yeah. It's also very good at thermal resistivity and has its own magnetosphere and its own type of little light thing. So it tries to really reduce the amount of radiation exposure to you, uh, which is good. And I already described it a few times on my YouTube channel, so there's that. But shockingly, even though the atmosphere is quite thin, it can still be burnt, which is kind of weird, yeah, right. But it's like, but what if I decided I'm going to make a bunch of bioreactors that make me air fuel? You know what I mean? Like gaseous fuel by just effectively eating the soil. You know what I mean? It's basically what it is. It's going to be soil equal with this bacteria and the enzymatic and catalytic helpers, along with heat and already there electricity to help the whole thing as a kind of terrarium sort of situation. It then produces for the what was this? It's the cheapest, fastest detonation engine right now that I'm talking about. Happens to then create plasmas and take a little bit of that air in, just a smidge, kind of try and compress it maybe, and put it in, that kind of thing, right? Right. But really, it's just meant to help with creating a atmosphere. That's right. I know that sounds weird, but I'm turning soil into more gas for the atmosphere. I'm still burning it, right? But I get to move around. Now, granted, it's a much larger buoyancy, and there has to be a lifting characteristic that is much larger for both of that to work, right? But now it's easier for you to travel around faster and set up. In this instance, there are pylons. Kind of think bumper cars kind of situation, right? Now, those are mostly for I know where to go to do these things, and then you can explore off of that and have a set amount of time until you need to come back, right? And then that allows for you to push both electricity, but not just the cable, but air and all that. You can also run roads eventually, possibly. It would probably take a while, but you might get there, right? And then eventually you'll be able to seal them, which is good, right? But the main thing was that's just for the airship thing, so you can travel easier, and then you can always drop down with either yourself and or a vehicle and run around, right? Right, because it's mostly just electricity and like air pressure differences, and again the bio stuff. So it's it's going to be able to last a really long time, which is good. But yeah, I don't sell you nothing here and call it everything, right? Although I kind of do for some of the universal stuff, but that's something else. That's how you phrase this stuff. You know what I mean? This is more of the you're not getting something from nothing. It's not gonna last forever, right? So there's that. The no lifting body. I do try and do a bunch of vacuum stuff for hollow and stamped and really lightweight material, so that way it's very efficient. W- That's a good thing. You want that, right? But of course, you are going to have to repair them. But it's a good thing you have the things to repair them and build new ones, right? So, but the eventual point of it is to build a base inside of Olympus Mons. You are going to be drilling in to make a big, huge base. Not even gonna lie, I like the big bases. Can't lie. I want, like, think ant stuff. You know what I mean? Like tunnel to here, to there, to there, all that, right? And then you have a bunch of solar panel and a bunch of like spongiform and all that stuff to try and power it, right? Right? And then you can eventually tunnel to other places, but at least you have a set up place to start, right? And it's much easier if you just sort of walk to the top of Mount Limit because you're basically in space. So, you know, a little easier to get from there to orbit. So I feel like it's possibly easiest. Now, it might not be. That's why the little rod pylon stuff, right? And then like the cable, and then the buoyancy, and then the lift, and eventually, that's a rocket kind of like sled, but it's not really a rocket sled. It's really just an acceleration runway, right? So that allows for you to then get to orbit much more easily and use that to your advantage. You might even be able to use a big, huge tunnel to try and fire yourself out of it as well, if you so chose. Possibly even with this thing called the big old vacuum thing, right? So who knows, right? But that's what that was for. It remains to be seen if it'll ever be done. But this is why this engine was kind of made. It's supposed to be super cheap, hyper efficient, really, really simple to manufacture. Because if you're on the moon or on Mars, then you probably want that. You know what I mean? Like super printable, easy to just squish and kind of, weld and all that together stuff. Make quartz is a pretty easy material to make, truthfully. Like a lot of stuff is all easy to make, easy to find, easy to source, easy to chemically do things, react, all that stuff. Right? So like that's what it was for. So I was like, yeah, yeah, no, this is super simple. Yes, I get it. It does look a little bit like a fucking terrifying mouth of a creature to a degree. Like, whoa, and it's got the little teeth. And then it's like r/ don't stick your dick in that time because it ain't coming out ever again without being ripped to shreds, I'll tell you. You know, so there's that. But ooh, uh, there you go. It's supposed to be real simple, right? Um, I came up with the design actually just thinking about thermal and fluid dynamics. Thermal and fluid dynamics are really hard for a lot of people, I guess, to imagine. But for me, it's not that hard. It's really pretty understandable that as it travels in and it starts doing this, it will react that way, right? And it becomes much more like a Tesla valve or a Lemke valve, because I like to do a lot of teardrops and I have this little, anyways, that's a different type of valve. I'm gonna have to coin it after myself. I've never seen anyone ever do any of those types of valves. And this is essentially using that with the teardrop and then the undulation as a valve, but then it like rotates and that's the detonate. Anyways, point is that's the valve. right? But it also happens to do the basic thermodynamic property of it's way less pressure here, even though it doesn't know that, because it sees itself as having suddenly made more pressure at every one of those straws, stator, however you want to call it, right? And so then it goes and moves forward and it expands outward. And there's more pressure there, it can only go there, and it continues making more of a vacuum, more of a pump, and more of a continuation of flow, which is what you're looking for. And pumping losses suck. Pumping losses are the worst. All rocket engines have the worst pumping losses. And they have the worst thermodynamic losses. It's so much heat, it doesn't get transferred to directional movement. This this removes that. There's still heat there. It's not perfect, but this makes it so it's thermally far more efficient. It depends on how you set it up and everything. Okay, that's kind of what the name of the game is. These are sizing. This is hole size. This is placement. This is all those things, and that's the research and development that you have to do. But the basic will work, and then can be built upon until it eventually gets to the point where it's way more thermally efficient. So much so, it would make no real sense to do something else. Right now, as a basic, it wouldn't maybe be something that you'd be like, we need to make in mass manufacture trillions or something of the, like replace all the things. All the things need to be replaced right now, this very now. you know, uh, I'd like that because it's my design, but like, still, the answer is for me, then no, don't do that. Don't, no. Uh, we need to like, really get it all real properly made. You know what I mean? Like the whole real and sweet spots and all the stuff, right? That kind of thing, where it's just about as perfect as you can get it, right? Because right now, the basic, it'll work and it will beat what we have, but it's not going to be as thermally efficient as I would like. And it's not going to be as fast as I would prefer. And it's going to buckle past a point at various altitudes at certain speeds because it doesn't suck in air the way it needs to, right? And that's a problem. At first, it's not so bad. And if you get to a higher altitude, which is really what it's meant for, then it's great. But past that point, it doesn't do that at a lower altitude, and it starts to produce a lot of heat, even with the turbuckles. Which, yeah, sure, I'm cooling them with effectively fuel, but then it's essentially deflagrating into the tube. So it's not exactly the best thing. Luckily, it won't go out the funnel, right? The central funnel, right? But there's room for improvement. Most of my designs have a trailing in a multitude of different places for wicks, meaning they'll extend inward the nozzle and that kind of thing like that. Um, and then the let's see, I talked about it sealing by squeezing inwards, right at the tip, right? Well, I figured that if I could get that done, then I have a way of doing it slightly differently by allowing for an extension of other stators and an expansion, meaning kind of like origami. That's basically like a hinge. So it's like it extends inward, but then it, unflaps effectively. And so that can slide in, and then that allows for a greater amount of compression and a greater degree of essentially suction. I know that sounds weird, but yeah, it increases velocity. But I also have on the other side a it's a good way to put that. It's attached to where the nozzle point is, but it's where the undulation part is, right? And so like that's still a cavity, even if it's sealed there. It's still a cavity, and it's going to race over. And so like that's a huge vacuum, right? And it's like, well, if I know what I'm doing and I don't make it too much of a loss of vacuum, I can place that to where the front end, the tips are, and where that extension is, and force in more air because there's a vacuum that's present there that's more vacuumy than before. So it connects the vacuum pressures. And those zones mean that it will accelerate even faster and allow for even more pumping action at lower altitudes and higher velocities. Higher velocities create plugs of air, which are very, very inefficient. Stupidly inefficient. I hate them. They suck. And so, like these little extender bits, both inside of the funnel but also outside, allow for that to both be captured and then routed back in as essentially a both sped up but hypersonic compression wave that goes into the engine itself and then is going to travel along boundary layer and frictional layers, right? That will focus it and allow for that vacuum to be produced and allow for the fuel to come in and then take longer to mix and then detonate because it's going to start detonating in the actual tube itself, right? At higher altitude, no, it won't. But at lower altitude, oh, you're damn right it's going to, you know? So, not a good thing. uh, but now that means we have a faster and faster detonation all the way into the bell end. And then we can expand that. And we only need to effectively kind of slow it down. It's very slightly slowing it down, but we're also increasing mass and we're cooling it at the same time, not just with fuel, but extra air. We're going to run a little bit more on the lean side. And then because it mixes so much, it'll be a lot more like a perfect stoichiometric. And then we're adding other extra air towards the bell end to help cool it and then allow for that to give us more mass, cool everything, and essentially slightly slow it down. Although it's really slight. We're talking, yes, so what's the difference between Mach 32 point blah 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 and Mach 32 point blah 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 blah? And I'm like, I don't think that's relevant. I don't think that's relevant at all. I'm sure it'll be just fine. I don't even want Mach 32. Are you kidding me? Do you know there are people around? There are people that exist. You can't just like, Mach 32, no troubles. Let me just suck a ginormous plug of air that was there that was super hardcore resisting our movement forward. While then suddenly thrusting out like near Mach 32, and then it'll eventually top out at that point, because at that point, chemical reactions don't really happen as quickly as they can, right? Like they just can't move fast enough. They have to be compressed even harder to be able to do what they need to do. And I'm like, basically, it's effectively a bomb that I'm managing to make all the chemical reactions occur at that time and point. So it's like, nah, no, I don't wanna. That sounds dangerous as fucking hell. So no, like it's we're gonna get into light speed territories that just don't make sense, to like us regular brained people, right? You know, but it's like you could theoretically get to that point. It just wouldn't be reasonable for most people, I imagine. Um, Especially since Mach 32 would put you into orbit in like a couple of seconds. So I don't think it's a worth it endeavor, but whatever. Uh, to each their own, though. But what I would say is it's gonna kill a bunch of people. It's the main reason why I'm not a fan of it. You know what I mean? You go straight, like you literally don't need to do any explosives, anything. Just go through any city and it'd kill everyone in the city. You probably only need to do like one pass, but hey, you know what? Just in case. Fuck it. Here's a couple of passes or something. and then the resulting shockwave and the heat, and yeah, you would be burning atmosphere. Although you could run rich if you wanted to really give her the old explosion, thermal barrack stuff. You know, it's hot enough, and then as it expands, it will then just add the air in from around. It's just insane to think about. Truthfully, yeah. Uh, eh, I wouldn't want to do it personally. Um, so there's that. Anything past like Mach 7 to Mach 12, maybe even 15, is all gonna get you into orbit so fast. Like you don't really need to do much at that point. Yeah. So um, that's really all there is to me about it, right? But that's usually higher altitude stuff. Yeah, I mean that's it really is. Yeah. So I don't know. But lower speeds, higher efficiencies, those will work for that and will absolutely be able to further increase a faux supersonic to hypersonic velocity flow, which is great. And then it captures all of that and then uses it as a compression wave and increases the amount of efficiency we get for scram ram kinds of designs. Okay. And then it dissipates off into the bell end, right? Which then no longer needs to be thought of as a big hypersonic or supersonic wave that will just kind of suck to here, right? And that's good. But that also means you need to get around 520-ish to 720-ish miles per hour. It depends on your altitude. We're talking about cruising altitude for a standard, like, big boy plane, then you only really need about 520, right? And then that allows for you to uh, effectively burn hydrogen at such a point and efficiency that it's accelerating with the electricity it has, right? To such a degree that it's really kind of nominal. I mean, it's like an optimal range. I don't know what. Anyways, it would get you to 520 and maintain at 520 at that point at much lower fuel use and a dissipation range and heat dissipation and the nitrogen, oxygen burning kind of atmosphere stuff to no longer occur, and no more thermal barrack stuff, which is great, and no more shockwave from the engine outgas. I don't know about uh, the shape and design of your. If you're doing my airship, then there will be no at all shockwave, and uh, which is great because it mostly just makes a big teardrop. The cleft kind of helps with the teardrop thing. Anyways, gonna move off of that. But if it's not and it's a regular plane, then it's a little bit different than it's still 520. So like you're not gonna be going supersonic. But if you want to go supersonic, which is really the name of the game for a lot of people, right? It's like, okay, well, at that, then it's mostly just another type of like, we're going to basically use my airship as kind of a circular. They're going to have to kind of like redirect the shockwave into the very air intake for the engine in the bell end area to begin with, which then helps it be dissipated and used as efficiently as possible, I suppose, as fuel, more or less, right? But if you don't have that, then most of the designs I have all redirect them either upward or into the gas flow, and then it reflects either directly backwards onto you, which really often doesn't do that, or it goes together with the gas flow, which often does that, or it reflects upwards, which is a good thing usually, right? Unless it's not, in which case, that's usually when it's like, oh, you decided to try and nosedive really hard and then try and pull up, didn't you? In which case, you're about to meet a big, powerful shockwave that's gonna for sure kill you. So don't do that. That will absolutely kill you. It's kind of like a bomb just exploded right above you. So don't do that. But otherwise, um, most of my designs are all about that. Like the wing thing that I do, like even wing stuff, it's like, yeah, no, I'm basically trying, that trailing edge thing, right? Like I more or less stick that to where the nose is, right? Like that's where the new wings are. Right, like the wings are where the nose are, and then it's like that's also where like there's this extension nozzle that's hollow, and then like that then has, effectively off to like the turbuckle, another air intake basically, and then the wings themselves off to the sides are a bunch of turbuckle with air intakes, and then that curves inwards towards where the gas, the exhaust is for your thrust, and then it goes towards that and then tries to be just above where that is to try and have it come back down in, because of course it creates a lower pressure there, and I try and have that lower pressure get met further forward as I try and curve them in really hard, so there's like a little hollow spot with like a little, like basically canard, or not canard, a wing, structure there, and then that allows for it to take air from like that front point and then try and suck it in from where that fuselage is, and then that leading edge and shockwave gets redirected towards where the exhaust, the thrust is, right. And it's usually pretty good, but it like likes to take it up a little bit, so it likes to up and then it drops it in, and then it like will either join in or reflect up, which is kind of the, oh yeah, no good. We don't want any of that, fucking hitting anybody, because it will gain energy in so doing this, which is usually fine because it's going up, right? But it also gains energy for the dissipation of the thrust. So as it flows outwards, it'll dissipate it a little bit faster. So it's like that supersonic shockwave goes in and then tries to mix and dissipate really quickly, which is usually a good thing because it means that you don't often have that as a big booming sound for your engine when it's only that high up, right? So that's typically what I do. Um, but that's also one of the reasons why it's like, why do you have a weird nose that extends when you get up to speed? Like it's the fucking alien, creature from Alien. And I'm like, well, um, there's a plug of air there, and I need to reach forward and basically grab it and turn it into workable energy, and then redirect the shock wave and the pressure wave back into the air intake. So that way it's smoother uh, overall for that shockwave. Now, as for fighter jets, you don't usually have to worry that much, but it does mean that you have more control surface area that's more consistent, and you can bite on a turn way harder than you think, um, which usually means bad things, because like right now the F-22 already fucking turns so hard that people can just, I guess, die, or the material strength will just break. So it's like, I don't know if it's that necessary, but I suppose if you've got it and you need it, here you go. But that's the majority of the reasons why I do it. Like even like old jet engines, like any of them, the big ones on those planes are effectively another version of that. Like they're turbuckle, front ring, and then like waveguides at the back, and then this hollow for like where the hub is, that then allows for it to go off with a little bit of fuel into the outside air versus the compressed one that burnt in the center, because there's a heat exchange that can kind of get done doing that. That allows for me, once I dump it into that, to burn that fuel and burn less fuel as it's leaner instead of richer, and then like also a little bit more on the rich side. They'll mix together and then they'll burn as a heat exchange in the engine and then allow for more thrust. But once it does this, it then expands and it travels faster, sucking more air in from that plug of air in front of it, right? But It also means more fuel use, kind of technically. It's kind of like roughly the same amount of fuel use. It's more about the fact that it's like, well, there's a big nose and you have a huge fuselage and there's a big wing. And so that plug of air did not go away. And while these engines are now suddenly getting their work done well, that does not like that. That that big fucking honking plane does not like that you're traveling that fast without doing a bunch of aerodynamic upgrades to make sure you can do that without making a big sonic wave mess and huge drag zones and uh, big kind of like buffeting suck kind of turbulence that likes to just appear many places all at once all of a sudden. Because the wing is usually pretty nice, and then once you get to a certain speed, it goes out the window. It doesn't like to stick. It basically just comes off the wing entirely. Then, like the same thing with a fuselage. If you even slightly tilt that damn nose up, it then wants to lifting body characteristic the entire thing, and then you flip and tumble around. It's all a bunch of don't do it, and you'll thank me that you didn't. All right, that's the end of it. Suck my dick and balls, like and subscribe, share, and hit that notification. That's my tagline. Yes, I know. See ya.